Let me ask you this out the gate. You're doing a thing that you and a lot of other podcasters do. Why do you hold the non-handheld mics? It's a very signature look, but where did that start?
Usually I just do it when I'm on the road, and I actually don't even know if it's plugged in currently, but I don't know how I sound. But I just like the flexibility. I like to be a little bit animated when I'm talking. But when I'm sitting down in a chair like you guys are at home, I usually have that pole holding it to my face.
Yeah, so what's Whitney's excuse? Because that guy just fucking holds the mic anytime he's ever on doing audio.
He's swaying like this. So when he used to be like that, he would go in and out where the sound would, you'd be like, wait, we can't hear you, man. You're 4 feet from the mic being too animated when you talk. So that's just, he started doing it. And then when I started coming on the road, I stopped bringing that big thing. So I kind of enjoy it now.
I think that you and Whitney are probably, you should probably be staying away from the animated stuff these days. It's nothing but trouble.
I'm good with the animated stuff. I keep it family friendly, just like my Toronto Maple Leafs. He went a little aggressive, and then obviously was under attack by the people online. Were you guys a few of the ones to attack him? Were you not happy with the AI bear?
I blocked him on Twitter because of it. I was very offended.
Okay. So, I obviously, and I saw him talking about on one of his podcasts, like, he looked like he was about to cry because he was so upset. And I did feel from that moment because he was like, I think that fucking people who commit sexual assault should be fucking killed, like buried under the prison and everything. And he was like trying to explain that like how animals are and how humans are and everything. And it was just a very internet thing where I was like, when I saw him post that, I was like, I wouldn't have posted that. But I also didn't think he was like advocating for something so horrible. And then it did lead to a conversation where like people had to tell people like, hey, you know how animals operate different than how humans operate. And then people who were saying that were being accused of taking one stance. And it was a big old, how the fuck did we end up here thing.
It turned into a full-fledged gong show, boys. And I think that most people just take it for what it was, and the fact that everyone thought that the Leafs were getting bent over by the Bruins, and then there we were. That was like, I mean, I think during COVID times, that might have been a straight up cancellation where most people have seemed to come back to sanity, where they can take things for what they are.
Let me ask you this, nice little transition here. You're a bit of a wild man on the air. And especially in their first few years, how close have you like come to getting in trouble with the execs, the suits?
Yeah, they've like, we call them pee-pee whacks in our industry. Like, when you get called into the coach's office, like, hey, what'd you get chirped for? Losing your guy in the back check there? Yeah, I got a pee-pee whack. But yeah, I mean, I it's hard. It was hard going from the podcast to live TV, where you're kind of just, now you have to run it through a double filter, as opposed to when you're on the podcast and you just kind of let it fly, and you're not really, I guess, forcing people to come there. They have to click. So it was definitely an adjustment, and there was a lot of pee-pee whacks in the midst of it all. And I've been okay lately, knock on wood, but I don't know, man. It's just all fun and games. And, if it ever comes a time where I accidentally cross a line, and I'll apologize and move on. And if it, whatever, it's just kind of how it is. I mean, you say some pretty candid stuff too, Pete. Like, you're not, you like to flirt with that line as well, as we all do for comedic effect.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm a nobody. I'm on fucking Twitter doing it. I have like bosses who have yelled at me and just been like, turn it down a little bit. But like, you've got big audiences, big execs, all that kind of stuff. So I was just curious. But like, I mean, you're like the quote unquote different guy in hockey media. And so like, I'm just kind of curious as like what your experience has been like transitioning into traditional and carrying a more fun personality to it. Like, that's why we love TNT in the panel, is that it's fun and entertaining and not so stiff. But I mean, for somebody like you, you're kind of putting yourself out there. So I'm curious what your experience has been like.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like sometimes you just don't want to let people down, and I'm very appreciative of TNT and like all the guys I get to work with. Like, obviously we have an unreal, like, Liam, Ace, whether it's Wayne, Talk, Hank in the seat. So we all are able to snap it around and really all be ourselves. But I think it always came down to, and I don't say this like with malicious intent at all, but like, if it always just came back to me just going back to the podcast and that's all there was, I would be happy. And then I would just go find stuff to do with my time, other than if like, a network wasn't able to hang on to me because of like the way that I am. So I guess like having that mentality probably like helps me to a certain degree, where it's like, hey, this is kind of who I am and how I come. And if it's not for you and it's not your cup of tea, then no worries. But like, I think we could all agree that I don't think I'm in that chair unless Spittin Chiclets exists. So I can just go back to where I came from, and the people that like listening to it can just listen to it there, and we can all just get on with our lives. But it seemed to, at least at this point, worked out great. And, obviously figuring things out along the way and trying to make adjustments to not piss them off as much as maybe I did at the start. And, or maybe they've kind of just been like, I'm sick and tired of wasting my time calling this guy in because he's got rocks for brains.
Fuck yeah. I mean, just be yourself, man. And obviously you do that. And I think that sometimes when anybody's even a little bit different, they're like, all right, cool. Fucking make me a bicycle clown and do all these crazy things. But part of why you're so good is because you'll make the joke when it's time to make the joke. You'll keep it light when it's time to keep it light. But you also point shit out from the perspective of a former player. And that's helpful to me as a viewer or a media member or whatever the fuck. I would say the basketball version of you is JJ Redick, who is a former player, big podcast, big following. He's getting coaching interviews now. Are you getting coaching interviews? And how would you change the Leafs as head coach?
So I don't have the credibility that JJ Redick had as a player. Like, I was nowhere near that. I just learned a lot from sitting in the middle of the bench and watching all the amazing coaches I had. Obviously, I played a decent amount up to a certain level, but I was just blessed with, I had great coaches whether it was in Pittsburgh, in their system, whether it was the ECHL or AHL even, and then obviously Dave Tippett in Phoenix. So I just like really paid attention to the details of the game because he was a very structured coach. So you would learn about like all these little things that we talk about on TV. But then again, like you have a guy like Talk who was in that chair, and like his knowledge for the game and his expertise and his the fact that he's been in a majority, if not every single situation that he's talking about. That to me, it like speaks to an NHL coaching standard. Now, would I maybe one day after like media is all said and done, like to start out at a lower level? Yeah, that would be awesome. But I don't know if I would have what it takes to be able to step into like a high-end professional job. But I do love the game, and I do love getting into the weeds as to what you're talking about, like talking details of the game, like understanding where guys need to be positionally. But like I said, I wouldn't give myself that much credit to step into an NHL coaching job or even an NHL assistant job. Maybe a video coach, but I can't even chop up video. But going back to the Leafs, I thought that Keefe did a great job. Like, I think that ultimately it comes down to your personnel and how they're able to execute come the most important part of the time of the year. And I feel that they could have gotten past Boston if maybe Mitch Marner plays better. And we can talk about all the other guys from like a coaching standpoint. Like, people might say, well, he was too easy on Marner, and these are maybe little things and details of the game that could have been explained and worked with over the past couple years. And maybe when he wasn't doing them, maybe sitting out or more punishment to mold him in to a better playoff performer, and also maybe some other guys in the lineup. But I wasn't in the locker room. I don't know how he approached that. And when you have a guy making $11 million, most of the time you have to put him out there because you need him to be a game breaker. But outside of all that, I thought that the moves they made at the deadline were fine for what they could do. And they filled in the holes that they could with the money that they had. And they lost game 7 in overtime. Like, what are you going to do?
I mean, do you think that like you talk about going back to the kind of the detail oriented stuff, like, do you think that you get a lot of jokes about kind of your career and being a lower end of the roster player. Do you feel like that's helped you in like being an analyst? Because we talk about a lot, like when it comes to coaching and stuff, the best players aren't often the good coaches because they don't necessarily have to like pay attention to the details or like understand what it takes to kind of work at the next level. So do you feel like that's helped you as an analyst, being kind of what goes into the research, what goes into the details to actually like stay in the league and keep a roster spot?
No, hey, that's a great question. And you're bang on, because like in order for me to get any form of ice time when I was in the NHL, like I played 5 minutes, I knew I couldn't make a mistake when it came down to any of those details of the game. So yeah. And so when I went out there, yeah, all those little important things mattered. For instance, Like, I know I keep going back to Marner, but on that pasta play, like, just get in front of him and slow him down. Like on that situation, that to me is a little detail that was lacked. And those were the little things that I had to bring in order to even get in the lineup. And then that it would be the 5 minutes. And the fact that I'm on the bench and seeing and listening to a lot of these interactions, whether it's Tip saying, mother effer, like, you got to be here, to the guy who's on the ice at the time. I'm just kind of picking this up and absorbing it all while I'm on the bench and having to just kind of sit there and once again absorb. Now, the other part to your question was the other guys. Yeah, some of these guys, like, they do know it, but a big portion of it is that they just go out there and they play. They just free flow, and they are incredible guys at just freelancing it, and they don't turn their brain on like that, because then when they start overthinking it, then all of a sudden the thinking takes over, and then you're not playing, and then you're not reacting. So great question. And yes, I think a big portion as to what's made me a good analyst is having all those good coaches, along with playing limited ice, where I had to keep learning and keep getting better in order to slowly climb up. And I got to play both positions too in Pro Boys. That helped too. Like, I was a defenseman who moved to forward. So that was just a little bit longer answer.
No, regular Dustin Bufflin. We Johnny Boychuk, if you will, even. We have a rule on our show, Biz. It's chit chat, not hit chat. We don't fucking break down hits. We don't slow it down. We don't say, where do you think the contact was made? I think we share that in common, because watching you and watching your panel, it seems the only time, tell me if I'm wrong, that you're not thrilled to be having a conversation is when you have to be doing prolonged hit chat. How do you like that part of the job?
And what did you think of the Jamie Benn hit?
Yeah, do some hit chat.
Yeah, so I figured that's why you guys were bringing it up. No, and I don't even mind talking about it. I don't like doing it every broadcast. I felt that was a very pivotal moment in the game. And, like, you have to talk about maybe the lack of response, and then the impact, the fact that he went down the tunnel. I feel like that maybe 3 years ago, the refs would have just been so scared of, like, public backlash and everything, and then he might have even gotten the gate in that situation. But I feel like that was the proper call. His elbow was down. I think that Taves did put himself in a bit of a vulnerable spot, but ultimately his elbow was down. He didn't come off his feet until, like, contact was made, maybe a little bit after. And that does happen sometimes. Some people want the charge in that instance. I would have been okay with a 2-minute minor for a charge, and then let's play on. So I feel like they got it right. I feel like it was a very important moment in that game, and I'm wondering how it will trickle on through the rest of the series. Both Josh Manson and Miles Wood have fought Jamie Benn in the past. We all know that intimidation factor does play a factor, especially this time of year. I would like to see them address it in the next game. That's just me, because if they don't, I feel like that's the type of hit that would propel a team and also help them take over from an intimidation standpoint. I don't mind talking about these, but I also feel like there's so many people that chime in who don't know what they're talking about, where anytime there's any type of contact, they're like, he elbowed him, direct contact to the head. And it's like, buddy, I've seen it from every angle, and that didn't happen. I don't know what video you're watching.
My favorite is his skates came off the ice, and they tweet a screenshot of like 4 seconds after impact, and it's like, yeah, that's not what that means.
Or they're skating, so like at one point, one of their skates isn't on the ice.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's always my favorite one. It happens every time.
Like one of the Rempe ones, I guess you could probably have called it a charge. Like one of the 3 that ended up going viral, people were crazy about. But what you're talking about last night is after Jamie Benn, as soon as he makes contact, if you freeze frame it, he's about that far off the ice with his blades, where that's part of the argument that they're bringing. And I'm saying, all right, man, then give him a 2-minute just to shut these people up.
Do you want to see like refs become available after games? That's something that I've always said. Like there's no like real sense of accountability for some of these calls, and sometimes the only way that you get an official explanation is if there is a suspension and they put out those videos from the NHL. Would you want to see refs be made available after games if they're requested?
I think that everybody would. Yeah.
Except the refs, maybe.
I think they're probably just doing that to protect them. They have that. Is it Jeff Jackson on ESPN?
Like Dave Jackson?
Dave Jackson, yeah.
Or Dave Jackson.
Michael
Sorry.
Jackson.
No offense to that guy, but he doesn't do anything for me.
No.
Well, I think
I
he's
don't
just
know if I've
agreeing with
seen
every
him
call.
yet. I don't think I've seen him yet like land like solidly on one side of an argument. He always plays both sides.
What they should do is save themselves a little bit of money. Instead of using Dave Jackson, just throw some Tim Peel tweets up on the screen because those are, you want animated. Holy God. It's not going to be about
Tim
hockey.
Peel's a wild
It's
man.
going to be calling somebody like a liberal bitch. And there you go. They're like, hey, what do we think of the hit? Let's pull up Tim Peel's Twitter. Holy fucking God.
It would be, what do you think of this Jamie Benn hit, Tim Peel? And it would just be a tweet, that guy doesn't eat pussy. And it'd be like, okay, all right, we're out of here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Good stuff. Good stuff, Tim.
I love it.
That guy's
I
a
love
psycho.
wild cards, especially in the hockey world. It just adds more entertainment and more bang for your buck. I agree. Let's pull up the Timmy Peel tweets. I might actually text that to the TNT execs. Just send them over a case of wine and just let them tee off. Let's go.
I think
do
that
a
would be
Manning
the thing that
cast.
got you fired. It'd be like Biz suggested this guy. We gotta let both of them go.
Referee Manning cast just going off the rails.
ESPN would lose their shit because I'm not just saying this. You guys have better coverage than ESPN does. If they thought it out, they're like, let's get a referee. We'll do all the right things and everything. And then you guys ended up smoking them, even in that department, by just taking some drunk Tim Peel tweets for free. Oh man, that would break their hearts. It would infuriate them.
We had Koharski, and I loved having him in, and he was a blast. And he was, he would pick one side or the other, and people would disagree with him. And it was very polarizing, but he would take a stance on one side, which I loved. And we loved having Koho around. And I'm not sure why we bring him back or don't bring him back. Excuse me. I don't know if it's budget cuts or, Zaslav had to get that bonus. But yeah, other than what was the one other thing about making them available. So what do you guys make of the officiating the last two games in the Carolina Rangers series?
It said it earlier. It's been way over officiated, and like that to me is a very, very bad sign for Carolina because they're getting fucking smoked on special teams. 5-on-5 play has been largely even. If the series continues to be officiated the way that it is, I think they're cooked.
Agreed. They're playing catch up each game. Where if you go back, like that Svechnikov, where they ended up evening it off, and they called him for a dive. He's fucking clearly making a play on the puck. Like I didn't
get that.
If you're a referee, how do you not understand that? And then going back, me and Ace argued a little bit on this, but the Brady Shea one behind the net after the breakaway, I think it was shorthanded for Rangers. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like so you're in real time, right? You're playing.
He has a right to that ice.
He has a right to that ice, and he's originally making a play on the puck. And then obviously, as he makes a step towards it, he sees his defenseman with momentum about to pick it up, who has a guy on his ass. So he's just moving out of the way for his teammate. Like you just said, that's just as much his ice as the other guys. He just got there first. So to me, those two, and then all of a sudden you're doing all these other makeup calls to play catch up because you can't give one team 6 power plays and another team 2, right? So from there, it just has to go back the other way where it's like, man, it's taking the flow out of everything, and I don't really want to see a parade to the box. I want to see the refs leave these guys alone and let them figure it out themselves.
Pete mentioned how close this Hurricane series has been, and it really has. Like all of these games have been decided by 1 goal. 2 of them went to overtime. Brind'Amour is going to do the "we weren't really swept" thing again after they get swept. Do you think the Rangers are that good? Like my thing all year has been there aren't great Eastern Conference teams. There are some really good Eastern Conference teams, and they'll probably end up playing some close series in the postseason. Other than Washington and the Islanders, nothing is really no team making a run really would surprise me. Do you think that the Rangers are as good as a 7-0 record in the postseason would suggest?
Yeah, they got. I mean, their special teams has been great all season long. It feels like it's been even better in playoffs. I think the question mark coming in, I think a little bit of some people were worried about Zibanejad the second half of the season and maybe some of the lack of production. But right now, and then maybe going back to last year where they thought that Panarin didn't really leave it all on the table, right? They thought that he underperformed, but right now, all of their top 6 are performing, and it's all coming together at the perfect time, along with Lafreniere. I feel like that Roslovic pickup has been drastically understated. I mean, maybe it's picking up more steam now because they're 7-0, and I think he's got 5 or 6 points. But not only that, their goaltending has been tremendous. I think that quick allowing Shesterkin the time to kind of find his game and also get rest in the start of the year has really paid dividends. And then the back end to me is a big catalyst to their team. And I know maybe some people have a certain feeling about Trouba. I think if they advance, which they probably will, and play Florida, I think that Trouba becomes so much more valuable at that sense in his crazy unpredictableness with the torpedo hits. I think that and the toughness helps them. But they have a big back end outside of Fox who are able to box guys out, allow Shesterkin to see everything. And we all know that if you want to have success in the playoffs, you need to have a back end that's built like that, who can block shots and box out. And it seems like it's all coming together along with coaching. So yeah, I think they're as advertised, and yeah, they're a well-oiled machine. And people are saying, oh, too much rest. I think people said their record coming out of All-Star break this year was tremendous. They obviously looked fine getting it after Series 1, and with the Boston and Florida beating the shit out of each other, it's probably not going to be a bad thing again.
Yeah, so do you have them coming out of the East? And part of that probably is the fact that whoever gets out of Boston, Florida is going to be fucking on their last legs.
That's the assumption after the first 2 games, but I have also talked to a few people that I really try. I just kind of go with my gut and what I'm feeling, and I'm obviously with my picks, I'm usually wrong. There's a reason they call me Mush Nasty. The opposite happens of what I say, but they think that Florida could rattle off 4 in a row. I would love to see this hatred and that hockey go to 7 games. That my assumption, it goes at least 6 or 7 now at this point. But Florida is very strong, so if they're able to get out of it in 5 and 6, I think I would still considering a coin toss, if not advantage Florida. But I don't know, man. The more I watch in the way that things are rolling out, the way that the Rangers are playing, it just kind of has this like their year feeling to it. And then all
Dave Pasternak, man, he's on the fucking prowl. He's going to beat the shit out of everybody. Bob, he don't give a fuck.
I mean, the Trouba point that you made is really smart, and that's why I wanted to see Jacob Lauko in the lineup for the Bruins, because he's
playing tonight.
Yeah, right. I'm glad. And I mean, he has that like kamikaze aspect to him where he plays like a psychopath. He's a great forechecker, and that's what you kind of need against Florida. Off the Rangers, like I wanted to ask you, one of my favorite things about the playoffs every year is that there seems to be at least one person that significantly raises their profile and kind of surprises people. Vinny Trocheck is the leader in the clubhouse for me this year, but is there anybody else, if it's Trocheck, if there is anybody else that has really, really impressed you, being like, damn, I didn't know he had that in him?
Yeah, outside of that big of a jump, he's already won a cup with them, but I would say Lehkonen. I would say that he's a drastically underrated player, and he seems to really do a lot in playoffs. He might play that same way during the regular season, but just because you're so zoned in, I feel like he's a guy. Also on the same team, Nichushkin.
I knew it. I knew you were going to say it. He's fucking dog.
No Wyatt Johnston?
I mean, familiar with his game.
So
hopefully.
I probably would have drew a blank on not mentioning him, but that's a genius pick. And yeah, he's just a guy who I think is going to blossom into a superstar. He just has it. I know he's like a little bit undersized, but some of those guys, kind of like Gensel, they're slippery. They got an unreal shot. Their hockey sense is through the roof, and it doesn't matter that the game is this physical and this punishing this time of year. They just find a way to slippery out of these situations. You saw a couple goals he scored already this playoffs where he's in the net front, and next thing you know, that he loses his D-man, where he's not even afraid to go to those areas. So Nichushkin, Lehkonen, and obviously Wyatt Johnson is becoming a household name. So that to me, I would say if we went up to Canada out west, I think that, and I believe he's going to be an unrestricted free agent just because of his age and the way that the contract and his timeline in the NHL has worked out. But Dakota Joshua.
Oh, fuck yeah. Love him.
He's
Mr.
a
Game
big
One.
body. He's elevated his play in playoffs. That third line has been a big catalyst for that team. And he was a guy at the start of the year who called out after training camp saying, I thought he was going to come in with a little bit more snarl and maybe not where we want him. And that little kick in the ass all season long, he was great. And then what we're seeing now. So he would be my other pick.
I'll throw two other guys out there as well. In Vancouver as well, Nikita Zadorov, guy who gets I think an unfair amount of criticism and hate leading up. Like when Vancouver traded for him, people were like, oh, great, another big guy that can't play on the back end for Vancouver. He's come up fucking huge for them in massive spots during this playoff run. I think that he's already been an incredible return for them, but also opposite end, guy who's tiny, Logan Stankoven. I've been extremely impressed. Like the production isn't quite along the pars as Wyatt Johnson, but Logan Stankoven's fearlessness as a guy who's been in the league for like 5 minutes and is in his first playoff run continues to impress me. So those are two guys that I would throw out there as well.
Yeah, he's just such a good checker. Like even when he doesn't have the puck, the way he's able to, use his speed and his effort to close on guys. So those are the little intangibles where sometimes you call up point guys from the minors who are dominating and all of a sudden they just want to skill it up. Mm-hmm. He brings a full 200-foot game with hockey sense where you feel like he's a seasoned vet. And, those the hard cap, you need players making major impacts on entry-level contracts. And I get from Dallas, I kind of get from Wyatt Johnson and Stankoven, like early day Chicago Blackhawks.
Yes,
vibe.
I was going to say that's exactly what the fucking Blackhawks did.
That's it, right? You need those guys who are basically core guys who are making no money and offsetting where maybe you overpaid some guys. But now because you have those, you're not thinking about the fact you're paying Seguin 10 and Ben 10. Because now with those four guys, it all evens itself out. And to those guys' fairness, man, those guys have turned things around over the last couple of years from a sense of not weighing down too heavily on the cap.
On the other side of that, we're talking about guys who are breaking out and overperforming. We're a big asshole watch podcast. We put teams and players on asshole watch. I think that right now the Oilers should be on asshole watch for what they did at the end of game one. It was terrible behavior, but what teams and or players are you looking at doing the classic postseason? They got to get that guy going thing. I think McAvoy is probably at the top of the list in Boston.
Yeah, he's struggled. Like, I don't know what it is, right? Because you could tell he's still trying to play physical. I don't know. And keep in mind, like I no credibility even compared to what McAvoy's done, the player he is. Sometimes when you're trying to be over physical, you tend to run around a little bit and try to emphasize it too much, where you got to kind of let things come to you. And I don't think that's happening. But the good news is just like Pasta and other guys of that caliber, it can change within a game. And, I felt like that was the case for even Pietrangelo, where he was struggling. Maybe it was due to injury, but he finally came alive a little bit in game 6 of that Vegas series, where he had been kind of a non-factor and, in fact, maybe hurting them a little bit before that. So McAvoy's definitely a guy. Other than that, I think you kind of nailed it with the way that they closed out the last half of the game. And I said this on the panel yesterday, and I think that I even mentioned it on McAfee today in game notes with the Chiclets boys, Army and Merles, where Talk has always had a good way of defending McDavid, and he did it with the Arizona Coyotes when he was coaching there, and he explained to me what their philosophy was. I won't break it down because I don't want to throw him under the bus because I hope that they could pull it off. But it seemed like they really neutralized him, and he was a complete non-factor 5-on-5. So they check him in a certain way and have certain strategies to eliminate maybe where he is from a threatening standpoint every shift. I'll leave it at that. So I'm interested to see. This guy had no shots. He's a video game cheat code player. If that happens again, maybe look and take what I just said with a lot more credibility in a sense of maybe they have McDavid figured out, and they better figure it out sooner rather than later and pray that they're going back home to get away from the matchups and maybe the wet blanket that's being put on McDavid.
We all silly like the mayor.